Could you dance with me? My ex is watching from the bar, she said, unaware he was the Mafia boss. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. And now, let's return to the main character. I didn't come to the club to be noticed. I came to forget. The bass rolled through the floor and up my legs, steady and heavy, like a heartbeat I couldn't slow down. Neon lights washed the room in blue and red, and every surface seemed to shine with someone else's confidence. I stood near the edge of the dance floor, fingers wrapped around a soda that had gone flat, pretending I was relaxed while my shoulders stayed tense. That was when I felt it. The stare. I didn't need to turn around to know who it was. Jason always watched like that, like he still owned the space around me. When I finally glanced toward the bar, there he was, leaning back on a stool, one arm draped casually, eyes locked on me as if time hadn't passed and boundaries didn't exist. My stomach tightened. I reminded myself I was free. We were over. Still, my pulse picked up, and suddenly the room felt smaller. I told myself not to react, but the more I tried to ignore him, the heavier his presence became. I shifted my weight, considering the exit, calculating how many steps it would take to leave without giving him the satisfaction of a reaction. That's when I noticed the man beside me. He hadn't been dancing. He hadn't even been looking around. He stood still, tall, composed, dressed in a dark suit that didn't belong to a place like this. While everyone else moved with the music, he seemed separate from it, like the noise bent around him instead of through him. There was something calm about his stillness, something solid. Without fully deciding to, I turned toward him. My voice surprised me when it came out steady. Could you dance with me? I said, then lowered it just enough to be honest. My ex is watching from the bar. He looked at me then, really looked, eyes dark and focused, not curious, not amused, just attentive. For half a second, I thought he might say no. Instead, he offered a simple nod and held out his hand. His palm was warm when I placed mine in it, grounding in a way I hadn't expected. As we stepped onto the dance floor, the music seemed to soften, or maybe my thoughts did. He didn't pull me close. He didn't rush. He guided, confident but careful, like he understood balance. I felt my breathing slow. Around us, the crowd blurred, and for the first time that night, I felt shielded. I didn't know his name. I didn't know anything about him at all. I only knew that when Jason's stare burned into my back, it no longer reached my skin. I let him guide me through the crowd, the music pressing in from every direction, but somehow it felt quieter inside the small circle we moved within. His hand rested at my back, steady and respectful, never crossing a line, yet firm enough to make me feel anchored. I focused on the rhythm, on the simple act of following his lead, telling myself this was just a dance, nothing more. Still, I could feel Jason's attention like heat between my shoulder blades. I did not look at him. I refused to give him that. The man dancing with me did not speak right away. He did not need to. His presence said enough. Tall, composed, unhurried. He moved like someone who never had to fight for space because space simply opened for him. Each step was precise, unshowy, confident. I caught my reflection in a mirror behind the bar, my hand resting lightly on his arm, my posture straighter than it had been all night. I barely recognized myself. The song shifted, slower now, and I felt his grip adjust, protective without being possessive. That was when I dared to glance past his shoulder. Jason had stood up. His drink sat abandoned on the bar, and his jaw was tight in a way I remembered too well. He took one step forward, then another, clearly debating whether to approach. My chest tightened, old instincts flaring, but before panic could take hold, the man with me subtly shifted his stance. He did not turn around. He did not glare. He simply placed himself between me and the rest of the room, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. It worked. Jason stopped. I exhaled without realizing I had been holding my breath. "Thank you," I said quietly, the words barely audible over the music. He tilted his head just enough to acknowledge me. "You are welcome," he replied, his voice low and even, with a calm certainty that surprised me. There was no flirtation in it, no demand for anything in return. Just fact. We continued to dance, and for the first time in weeks, my thoughts slowed. I did not think about past arguments or unanswered messages or the way Jason always promised change. I thought about the feel of the floor beneath my shoes, the steady beat in my chest, the strange comfort of a stranger who felt safer than someone I had once loved. When the song ended, he did not immediately let go. He looked down at me, not intensely, not possessively, just attentive. "Are you all right?" he asked. I nodded. "I am now." The words surprised me with their honesty. He released his hold, giving me space, but did not step away. Around us, the club pulsed back into full motion, laughter and movement closing in again. From the corner of my eye, I saw Jason turn away, his attention finally broken. Relief washed over me, followed by a tremor I could not quite hide. The man noticed. He always noticed. "Do you want some water?" he asked. I hesitated, then nodded again. At the bar, he ordered without raising his voice, and the bartender responded immediately, with a respect that felt out of place. I took the glass, my fingers brushing the cool surface, and realized my hands were still shaking slightly. "You did not have to do that," I said, meaning all of it. The dance, the shield, the quiet intervention. He met my gaze, his expression unreadable but not unkind. "Sometimes," he said, "being watched does not mean you are alone." I did not understand what he meant, not yet. All I knew was that something about this night had shifted, and I had the sense that walking away now would not make it disappear. I stayed by the bar longer than I meant to, sipping water and letting the cold glass steady me while the noise of the club pressed back in. He stood beside me, not too close, not distant either, like he understood balance instinctively. People moved around us without interruption, yet I noticed how the bartender kept glancing his way, how a few conversations nearby lowered in volume. I told myself it was coincidence. I did not want to imagine more. "I am Emily," I said finally, breaking the silence because quiet with him felt different, heavier somehow. He nodded once. "Alex," he replied. "Just Alex. No last name. No extra explanation." It should have felt strange, but it did not. We talked in fragments, the way people do in loud places. Where I lived. What brought me out tonight. He listened more than he spoke, his attention focused, never drifting, as if every word mattered. When I mentioned working long hours and learning to be independent again after a difficult relationship, he did not offer advice or sympathy. He simply said, "That takes strength." The simplicity of it hit harder than comfort ever had. Another song started, and without asking, he extended his hand again. This time, I accepted without hesitation. On the dance floor, the movement felt easier, less defensive. I forgot to watch the room. I forgot to calculate exits. I laughed once, softly, surprised by the sound of it. Alex noticed. His mouth curved into the smallest smile, gone almost as soon as it appeared. As we moved, I became aware of subtle things. The way people shifted to give us space. The way a man near the edge of the floor started to approach, then stopped after catching Alex's eye. There was no threat in Alex's expression, just calm certainty. It made me feel safe in a way I could not explain. When the song ended, he guided me off the floor again, his hand leaving my back the moment we stopped moving. "Your ex," he said quietly, not asking. "He will not bother you tonight." I frowned. "You cannot know that." Alex met my gaze. "I do." Something in his tone made my stomach flutter with unease, but not fear. Curiosity. "How?" I asked. He paused, just a second too long. "Because some people understand when to let go," he said. It felt like half an answer, but I did not press. Instead, I glanced toward the bar. Jason was gone. Not just turned away. Gone entirely. Relief washed over me, followed by a strange sense of finality, like a door closing quietly instead of slamming shut. "I should go," I said, though I did not want to. The night air outside felt cooler as we stepped away from the noise. The streetlights cast long reflections on the pavement, and the city hummed with late-hour energy. Alex stopped near the entrance, giving me space again. "Did you get home safely?" he asked. I nodded. "I live a few blocks away." He studied my face, as if committing something to memory. "Good." I hesitated, then smiled, a real one. "Thank you for the dance." He inclined his head slightly. "It was my pleasure, Emily." As I turned to leave, I felt his gaze on my back, not possessive, not demanding, just present. I took a few steps, then glanced over my shoulder. Alex was still there, standing calmly under the glow of the lights, watching to make sure I disappeared safely into the night. I did not know why that image stayed with me long after I reached my apartment, only that something about him felt like the beginning of a story I had not chosen, but also could not ignore. I did not sleep much that night. The city outside my apartment window hummed the way it always did, distant sirens and passing cars blending into a familiar lullaby, but my mind refused to quiet. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Alex standing under the streetlight, calm and watchful, as if the night itself answered to him. I told myself it was nothing. A stranger. A moment. By morning, logic returned, or at least I thought it had. I showered, dressed, and walked to work, the rhythm of my routine grounding me again. The cafe was busy, the usual morning rush of commuters and regulars, and I lost myself in orders and small talk. For a few hours, the night before felt distant, almost unreal. Then the door opened, and the air shifted. I did not hear him at first. I felt him. The subtle pause in conversation, the way a couple of heads turned without anyone knowing why. When I looked up, Alex was standing just inside the entrance, dressed casually now, dark jacket, no tie, but the same composed presence. My heart stumbled. He met my eyes immediately, like he had known exactly where to find me. He waited until I finished with a customer before approaching, unhurried, respectful. "Good morning, Emily," he said, his voice steady, as if it was perfectly normal to appear in my daylight world. "Good morning," I replied, surprised that my voice did not shake. "What are you doing here?" He glanced at the menu, then back at me. "I was nearby," he said simply. "I wanted to see if you were well." There it was again, that careful phrasing that suggested intention without pressure. I nodded. "I am." He ordered coffee, black, and paid without comment. As I prepared it, I became aware of my coworkers watching from the corner of their eyes, curious, intrigued. When I handed him the cup, our fingers brushed, brief and harmless. Yet the contact sent a spark of awareness through me. "Thank you," he said. He did not linger, did not take a seat, just held my gaze for a moment longer than necessary. "Have a good day, Emily." Then he was gone. The door closed behind him, and the cafe returned to its normal noise, but something had shifted again. At lunch, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. I stared at it for a second before answering. "Hello." "It is Alex," came his calm voice. I should have asked how he got my number. I should have been concerned. Instead, I felt an unexpected sense of ease. "I hope I am not interrupting," he continued. "I wanted to apologize if I surprised you earlier." "You did," I admitted, then added, "but it is fine." He paused. "May I take you to dinner tonight?" The directness caught me off guard. No games. No hesitation. My instincts warred inside me, caution against curiosity. "I do not know you," I said honestly. "That is true," he replied. "But I would like to change that, slowly, if you allow." His choice of words mattered. Slowly. Allow. I looked around the break room, at the scuffed table and chipped paint, my ordinary life. Then I thought of the way I had slept better knowing someone had watched until I was safe. "Okay," I said, surprising myself again. He named a restaurant, modest but well-known, and promised to pick me up at 7. When the call ended, I sat there for a long moment, phone warm in my hand, aware that I had just stepped onto a path I did not fully understand. Yet beneath the uncertainty was something else, a quiet sense of inevitability, like the night at the club had not been a coincidence, but an introduction. At 7 sharp, a black sedan waited at the curb outside my building, clean and understated, not flashy enough to draw attention, yet impossible to miss once you noticed it. Alex stepped out as I approached, opening the door for me with quiet courtesy. He looked different from the club and the cafe, dressed simply, comfortably, like a man who did not need to impress anyone. "You look nice," he said, not as an appraisal but an observation. "Thank you," I replied, sliding into the seat, aware of my own nerves. The drive was smooth and unhurried, the city passing by in familiar blocks and intersections. Alex did not fill the silence unnecessarily. When he spoke, it was about neutral things, traffic, the weather, the restaurant we were headed to. It eased me more than small talk ever had. The restaurant was warm and softly lit, the kind of place where conversation stayed low and unintrusive. The host greeted Alex by name, not overly familiar, but respectful. I noticed, filed it away, told myself not to read into it. At the table, we talked. Really talked. About my work, my plans, what independence meant to me after years of compromise. He listened the same way he had before, with focus that made me feel like my words mattered. When it was his turn, he spoke carefully. He said he worked in business. He said responsibility shaped his life more than he would have chosen. He did not lie. I sensed that. But he did not tell me everything either. I did not push. Somewhere between the appetizer and the main course, my phone buzzed. A message from Jason. I froze, the screen lighting up with a name I had not saved but still recognized. Alex noticed immediately. You do not have to answer, he said quietly. I swallowed and locked the screen. He should not be texting me, I said, anger mixing with something older. Alex nodded. Then he will stop. The certainty in his voice made me look up sharply. You cannot control other people, I said. He met my gaze without flinching. No, he agreed. But I can make boundaries clear. I should have questioned that more. Instead, part of me felt relieved. After dinner, we stepped back into the night air. The city felt calmer, less threatening. Alex walked me to my building, stopping a respectful distance from the door. I enjoyed tonight, he said. So did I admitted. He hesitated, then spoke with deliberate care. Emily, there are parts of my life that are complicated. I do not want to mislead you. My heart picked up. Are you saying this is a mistake? He shook his head. No, I am saying that if we continue, it will be because you choose it, knowing that I will always prioritize your safety. The word safety echoed in me. I thought of Jason's messages, the way fear used to sit heavy in my chest. I appreciate your honesty, I said. I want to take things one step at a time. A small smile touched his lips. That is all I would ask. Inside my apartment, I checked my phone again. Jason's message was gone. Not blocked. Gone. No follow-up. No calls. The silence felt intentional. I sat on my couch, heart racing, understanding finally clicking into place. Alex was not just a man who danced well or listened closely. He was someone used to influence, to making things happen quietly. The realization scared me, but it did not send me running. Instead, it made me aware that the night I asked a stranger to dance had opened a door I could not close, and that whatever Alex was, his presence had already begun to change the rules of my life. I began noticing changes in small, quiet ways. My commute felt lighter. I no longer checked over my shoulder every time I stepped onto the sidewalk. Jason did not call. He did not text. His name stopped appearing in places where it used to linger like a bruise. I told myself it was coincidence, that people moved on, that silence was normal. Still, the timing was too clean. Alex did not push his way into my days. He appeared when invited, always respectful of my space, always aware of my boundaries. We met for coffee, for walks, for dinners that felt less like dates and more like conversations between two people learning each other carefully. He never stayed late, never crossed lines I did not draw. And yet, I felt him everywhere, a steady presence even when he was not beside me. One evening, as we walked through a small park near my apartment, I finally asked the question that had been sitting in my chest. What kind of business are you really in? I asked, trying to keep my tone casual. Alex slowed, then stopped, turning to face me under the glow of a street lamp. The kind that requires discretion, he said honestly, and responsibility. I waited. He continued, choosing his words with care. I manage people. I manage risks. I make sure problems do not spill into places they do not belong. My heart beat faster. That sounds dangerous. He considered that. It can be, he admitted. Which is why I am careful about who I let close. There it was. Not a confession, but not a denial either. I thought about the way doors opened for him, the way others adjusted around him, the way Jason had disappeared from my life without a sound. Did you do something? I asked quietly. Alex's gaze did not waver. I made it clear that you are not to be bothered. The words were calm, controlled, but the meaning behind them was heavy. Without hurting anyone, he added, as if reading my thoughts. I do not involve you in things like that. Relief mixed with unease. I did not ask you to protect me, I said, needing to say it out loud. I know, he replied, but I chose to. I searched his face for possessiveness, for entitlement. I found none. Only resolve. That is what scares me, I admitted. And what is not? He asked gently. I hesitated, then answered honestly. The fact that I feel safer with you than I ever did before. He nodded slowly. Safety should not feel like a debt, he said. If it ever does, you walk away. The word surprised me. You would let me? A faint, serious smile touched his lips. I would not stop you. That night, alone in my apartment, I replayed our conversation. I thought about power, about how quietly it moved, how it did not always announce itself with force. Alex did not demand. He did not threaten. He simply decided, and the world adjusted. The realization should have sent me running. Instead, it made me understand the kind of man he was. Someone who believed control was proven by restraint. The next morning, a small envelope waited outside my door. Inside was a card with a single line written neatly. If you ever feel unsafe, call me. Anytime. No obligation. There was a number beneath it. No flowers. No grand gesture. Just certainty. I sat at my kitchen table, sunlight spilling across the floor, and understood that the story I had stepped into was not about being rescued. It was about standing beside someone who chose to stand between chaos and the person he cared for, without asking for ownership in return. The first time I heard his full name, it was not from him. It slipped into my world quietly, the way truth often does when it no longer feels the need to hide. I was closing the cafe one evening when one of my coworkers leaned over the counter, eyes wide with the kind of excitement gossip brings. "Do you know who that man you have been seeing is?" she asked. I frowned, wiping down the surface. "What do you mean?" She lowered her voice. "Alex Romano. My cousin works downtown. Everyone knows that name." The cloth stilled in my hand. "Knows it how?" She hesitated, then shrugged. "Power. Money. People do not cross him." She said it lightly, like a rumor, but something cold settled in my chest. That night, I walked home slower than usual, the city lights blurring as thoughts collided. Alex Romano. The name carried weight I had felt, but refused to define. When I reached my apartment, my phone buzzed. A message from Alex, asking if I was home safe. I stared at the screen for a long moment before replying. "Yes. Can we talk?" He arrived within 20 minutes, not rushing, not delayed, as if time bent easily around him. Inside, I did not offer him a seat. I stood, arms crossed, needing the space. "Who are you really?" I asked. Alex met my gaze, his expression serious, prepared. "I am someone who carries responsibility," he said. "An influence." "That is not an answer," I said, my voice tight. He nodded. "Then I will be clearer. I am involved in operations most people prefer not to see. I do not pretend it is clean, but I do not involve innocent people, and I do not tolerate harm near me." The room felt smaller. "Are you a criminal?" I asked. The word tasted sharp. He did not flinch. "I operate outside simple definitions," he replied. "I protect what matters to me." Anger flared, fueled by fear. "You decided to protect me without asking," I said. "You decided to remove Jason from my life. You made choices for me." His jaw tightened slightly, the first sign of tension I had seen from him. "I would never force you to stay," he said firmly. "But I will not apologize for making sure you were safe. That is not your decision to make." I shot back. Silence stretched between us, heavy but controlled. Finally, he spoke, softer now. "You are right. And if my presence makes you feel trapped, I will step away." The word stunned me. I searched his face for manipulation. Found none. "Why?" I asked quietly. "Because power means nothing if it takes away choice," he said. Something inside me shifted. Fear did not vanish, but it rearranged itself. I realized the truth I had been avoiding. Alex was dangerous, not because he was violent, but because he had reach. And yet, he was the first man who had never tried to own me. "I need time," I said. He nodded once. "I will give you space." He moved toward the door, then paused. "Emily," he said, "everything I have done was to keep chaos away from you, not to pull you into my world." When the door closed behind him, I sank onto the couch, heart pounding. I understood then that loving someone like Alex would never be simple. It would mean standing at the edge of a powerful shadow and choosing, every day, whether to remain in the light beside it. And for the first time, the choice felt truly mine. I tried to give myself distance, telling Alex I needed time, and then actually taking it. Days passed where we did not see each other, only brief messages checking in, never pressing, never demanding. I focused on work, on routine, on reminding myself who I was before the night at the club. Still, the city felt different now, like a map had been redrawn without my permission. One afternoon, as I walked home, rain started suddenly, heavy and insistent, forcing me to duck under the awning of a closed storefront. My phone buzzed again. Alex. I hesitated, then answered. I am nearby, he said. Do you want a ride? I looked at the empty street, the rain soaking through my jacket, and exhaled. Yes. He arrived quickly, the same black sedan pulling to the curb, the door opening before I reached it. Inside, the quiet wrapped around me. We did not speak right away. The windshield wipers set a steady rhythm. Finally, I broke the silence. I am scared, I admitted. Not of you exactly. Of what being close to you means. Alex kept his eyes on the road. Fear is reasonable, he said. What matters is whether it controls your choices. I turned toward him. And does it control yours? He paused at a red light, then met my gaze. It used to, he said. Before you. The honesty in his voice disarmed me. I did not plan to meet you, he continued. I did not plan to care. That night, when you asked me to dance, I saw someone trying to reclaim her own space. I respected that. The light changed, and he drove on. Everything since then, he added, has been my attempt to protect that choice, not replace it. I thought about all the men who had told me what was best for me without listening. Alex was different, not because he was powerful, but because he understood restraint. I do not want to be hidden, I said. I do not want to be kept safe by shrinking my world. He nodded. Then you will not be, he replied. I will not ask you to live in shadows. We pulled up outside my building, rain still falling. Neither of us moved to get out. There is one more thing, I said quietly. If I stay, it is because I choose you, not because I feel indebted. Alex's expression softened. That is the only way I would accept it. I studied his face, the calm strength, the absence of desperation. Then I choose to keep going, I said, my heart pounding. Carefully. He smiled, genuine this time. Carefully, he echoed. Over the following weeks, he kept his word. He introduced me to his world only at the edges, dinners with trusted friends, places where I felt visible, not hidden. He never asked me to compromise my values. When decisions affected me, he asked first. Slowly, the fear loosened its grip. I realized that loving Alex did not mean surrendering myself. It meant standing beside someone who understood that real power was not about control, but about creating space for another person to stand freely. The night I finally reached for his hand without hesitation, I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, I was no longer reacting to fear. I was choosing my own direction, with my eyes open, and that made all the difference. The night everything settled into place did not arrive with drama or spectacle. It came quietly, the way truth often does when it no longer needs to prove itself. Alex and I stood on the rooftop of a building overlooking the city, the skyline stretching out in lights and shadows, familiar yet newly defined. The air was cool, carrying the distant hum of traffic and late-night conversations far below. We had not come here for a reason beyond space to think. I leaned against the railing, watching the city that had shaped me, that had taught me caution and resilience. This is where it all overlaps, Alex said beside me. The world people see and the one they pretend does not exist. I nodded. I used to think safety meant shrinking my life, I replied. Being quieter, taking up less space. He turned toward me. And now, I considered it. Now I think safety is knowing I can stand where I am without fear. Alex studied my face, searching for uncertainty. You know my life will never be simple, he said. There will always be complications. Attention. Expectations. I met his gaze steadily. And I will not disappear into them, I said. If I stay, it is as myself. A pause stretched between us, not tense, but significant. Then he nodded once. That is why I trust you here, he said. Trust. The words settled deep in my chest. Not possession, not protection alone. Trust. We talked then about boundaries, about the future in practical terms. Where I would continue working. How he would keep parts of his world separate, not as secrets, but as responsibility. There were no promises of perfection, only clarity. As the night deepened, a breeze lifted my hair, and Alex gently tucked it back without lingering. The gesture was simple, familiar now. I thought back to the club, to the fear that had driven me to ask a stranger for a dance. I smiled softly. You know, I said. That was the first time I chose not to run. He returned the smile, quiet and real. And I chose to follow your lead. When we left the rooftop, we did not rush. On the street below, a couple laughed as they passed. unaware of the decisions being made above them. Life continued, indifferent and constant. At my building, Alex stopped as he always did, giving me space to decide what came next. I took his hand instead, intertwining my fingers with his. "You can walk me upstairs," I said, not as an invitation to cross boundaries, but as a statement of comfort. He did, respectful as ever, stopping at my door. Inside, I paused, looking at him, seeing not just power or danger, but a man who had learned restraint through choice. "This is not a fairy tale," I said quietly. "No," he agreed. "It is real." I opened the door, then turned back one last time. "But it is mine," I said. He nodded. "Always." As I closed the door behind me, I felt something settle into place. Not certainty about the future, but confidence in my ability to face it. I had not been saved. I had not been claimed. I had chosen, fully aware, fully present. And that night, I understood that the most powerful shift in my life did not come from standing beside a man with influence, but from realizing I no longer needed fear to guide my steps.